Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling something that is quite literally a behemoth.
It really is.
I'm talking about a piece of text that if you were to sit down and read it aloud, it might take you longer than this entire deep dive.
Oh, easily. It's massive. If you're reading through the Psalms and you hit this one, it feels like hitting a wall or maybe a mountain.
We are looking at Psalm 119. And just to set the scale here for everyone, most Psalms are short poems, maybe 10, 12 verses.
Yeah, you read them in a minute, you get the vibe, you move on.
Psalm 119, 176 verses.
It's practically a book within a book, the longest chapter in the Bible by a landslide.
And I'll be honest with you right off the top, when I first looked at the source material for this week, I had that instinctive reaction of, do we have to?
I think everyone does.
Because the reputation of this chapter is that it's repetitive. It feels like 176 verses of someone just saying, I follow the rules, I really like the rules, please teach me more rules.
It definitely has that reputation. I keep the law, I love the statutes, over and over and over.
Exactly. It feels like reading the terms and conditions on a software update. You know it's important, but your brain just wants to scroll to the bottom and click accept.
Without actually reading it.
Right. But our mission today is to figure out why this thing exists. Because when you actually dig into the text, and we're looking specifically at the King James text today, it isn't a dry legal manual at all.
Not even close.
It turns out to be this incredibly intense, almost desperate, lived experience. It's less about rules and more about survival.
That's the perfect way to frame it. This isn't a theologian writing from an ivory tower with a cup of tea. This is a meditation from the trenches.
From the trenches.
Yeah. It's about persecution, political slander, and finding an anchor when your psychological world is absolutely dissolving.
Which sound way more relevant to modern life than a list of ancient laws. But before we get into the drama, and there is drama, we have to talk about the structure, because the first thing you notice visually, before you even read a sentence, are these strange headers. Aleph, Beth, Gimel.
Right.
It looks like an outline, but it's actually the Hebrew alphabet, isn't it?
It is. Psalm 119 is an acrostic poem. It's broken into 22 stanzas, one for each letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay.
And in the original language, every single line in that stanza begins with that letter.
Wow. That seems incredibly difficult to write. It feels like a constraint. Why go to all that trouble? Is it just showing off?
Well, it's definitely an artistic flex, but it serves a very specific function. First, in an oral culture, it's a memory aid. If you know your ABCs or your Aleph Beths, you know what comes next.
It makes sense.
But deeper than that, it implies totality. It's like saying, I am going to explore this topic from A to Z.
So it's an attempt to capture the whole spectrum of human emotion regarding God's word.
Precisely. And I think there's a psychological angle here, too. As we'll see, the content of the psalm is about chaos. He's dealing with enemies, traps, a melting soul.
Right.
But the structure is rigid, alphabetical order.
That's fascinating. It's like he's forcing order onto his internal chaos.
Yes. It's a coping mechanism. He's saying, my life is falling apart, I'm being hunted, I'm depressed, but I will organize my reality according to this unshakable structure. It's like therapy through structure.
Okay, so he's organized. But let's talk about the vocabulary, because this is where people, myself included, get bogged down. You mentioned the terms and conditions vibe earlier. The text is saturated with words like law, statutes, commandments, testimonies, judgments, precepts.
The big 8 words, they show up in almost every verse.
And to a modern ear, those all sound like synonyms for the same thing. Rules I have to follow or I'll get in trouble.
Sure.
But the sources suggest there's more nuance there. Are these actually different things?
They are, and if you treat them all as just rules, you miss the flavor of the relationship. Take the word testimonies, for instance.
Okay.
In Hebrew, that implies a witness. It's something that testifies to who God is. It's about his character, his story.
So it's not just a do not walk sign. It's a statement about the nature of the lawgiver.
Exactly. Then you have statutes. That word comes from a root meaning to engrave.
Engrave.
These are the permanent, unchangeable boundaries of reality. Gravity is a statute.
Yeah.
You don't break gravity. If you ignore it, you break yourself against it.
That's a powerful distinction. So when he says, I love thy statutes, he's not saying I love red tape. He's saying I love the fact that reality has a solid floor.
He loves that the universe isn't random. And then judgments usually refers to case law decisions God has made in history. He's looking at the track record to understand how to navigate the present.
So it's a vocabulary of relationship, not just legislation. But here's the rub for me. Even if I understand the words, the emotion he attaches to them feels alien. Well, look at verse 103. How sweet are thy words unto my taste, yea, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Or verse 16, I will delight myself in thy statutes.
You don't usually talk about the tax code that way.
I delight myself in the zoning ordinance. No, nobody says that. It feels almost like toxic positivity. Is he faking this? Is he just trying to butter God up?
If you only read the happy verses, it might seem that way. But you have to read the other half of the data. This guy's not having a good time.
That's true. The lows in this chapter are really, really low.
They are visceral. Look at verse 28. My steel melteth for heaviness.
That's a heavy image. Melteth. Like he's losing his substance. It sounds like burnout.
It sounds like clinical depression or extreme grief.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 53, horror hath taken hold upon me. Or verse 136, rivers of waters run down mine eyes.
So this is a man who is weeping, terrified, and exhausted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when he says the law is sweeter than honey, he's not saying it from a beach chair. He's tasting that sweetness in the middle of all that bitterness.
That changes the context completely.
Right.
He's clinging to these statutes because everything else is hostile.
Right.
And speaking of hostile, let's talk about the specific enemies in this text, because he's not just sad, he's under attack.
He is, and the sources point out something interesting. These aren't just random bandits. Look at verse 23.
Princes also did sit and speak against me.
Princes. That implies government, authority, people with status.
So this is punching down. These are people who can ruin your career or your life with just a word. He's being slandered in the halls of power.
And look at verse 85. The proud have digged pits for me.
Big pits. That sounds like entrapment.
It is. It's a very modern dynamic, actually. Think about a hostile corporate environment or even the brutal side of social media.
Sure.
You have people in power, the proud, looking for a slip-up so they can destroy your reputation. They are digging pits.
That feeling of walking on eggshells, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right. Now, the normal human reaction to that kind of pressure, when you're trying to do the right thing and you get attacked for it, is to blame the system.
Or even to blame God.
Exactly. I kept the statutes, I did everything right, so why are the princes winning?
I held up my end of the bargain. Where's my protection?
Yes. But look at verse 71. This is the pivot point of the deep dive for me. This is where the logic just turns completely upside down.
It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes.
It is good for me.
Okay, I have to push back on that.
Yeah.
That is a hard pill to swallow. It sounds almost masochistic. Thank you for the pain. May I have another?
It definitely sounds that way on the surface, but look at the second half of the sentence, that I might learn thy statutes.
Right.
The thinking here is that before the affliction, he knew the text intellectually, he could recite it, he probably got A's in Sabbath school.
But he didn't know it.
He didn't know it experientially. The suffering stripped away his reliance on his reputation, his comfort, his status as a good person.
Yeah.
When the princes started lying about him, the only thing he had left that was true was the word.
So the affliction forced the depth. It moved him from a casual reader to a desperate dependent.
It's the difference between reading a survival manual in your living room versus reading it while you're lost in the woods at night. You pay attention differently in the woods.
That's a great analogy.
The affliction forced him to test the weight of the statutes, and he found out they actually hold.
That brings us to this idea of the anchor. Because if we are applying this to the listener today, maybe they aren't fighting literal princes, but the modern world is arguably just as unstable.
Oh, absolutely. We live in an information landscape that changes hourly. Public opinion shifts overnight. What was acceptable yesterday is cancelable today.
It feels like the ground is always moving. You wake up and check your phone to see what you're supposed to be angry about today.
And that's where the statutes, the engraved things, become so valuable. Verse 89 says, Forever, O Lord, thy word is settled in heaven.
Settled. That's a comforting word in an unsettled world.
It's the fixed point, when your emotions are lying to you, saying, I'm a failure, or it's hopeless. And when the culture is lying to you, saying, you need this product to be happy, the text doesn't move. You calibrate your compass against that fixed point.
So this leads to the big reframe on obedience. Because in our culture, obedience is a dirty word. It means losing your freedom. It means doing what you're told by the man.
It implies restriction, limiting your options. But Psalm 119 frames it as the exact opposite, verse 45. And I will walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts.
Liberty.
The Hebrew imagery there is actually a wide place, a broad space.
So how do you get a wide space from narrow rules. That seems like a contradiction.
Think of it like a train. This is a classic analogy. Is a train free when it jumps the tracks and goes off-roading across a field?
I mean, technically it's not bound by the rails anymore, but it's not going anywhere. It's stuck in the mud. It's a disaster.
It's a wreck. The train is only free to move, to be powerful, to do what it was designed to do when it is aligned with the tracks. That's the argument here. The law isn't a cage. It's the track designed for human flourishing.
So it's alignment versus legalism. Legalism says, follow the rules or else. Alignment says, this is how the machine works. Don't put water in the gas tank.
And when you are aligned, you have peace. You aren't constantly fighting against the grain of reality. You are walking at liberty.
This connects to probably the most famous verse in the chapter, verse 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. We see that on bumper stickers everywhere.
Everyone knows it, but notice the scope. It's a lamp for your feet, not a spotlight for the mountain range 3 miles away.
It's low beams, not high beams.
It's just enough light for the next step. And in a chaotic world, that is often the only thing you get. You don't get the 5-year plan.
Right.
You don't gonna know how the conflict with the princes ends. You get the wisdom to make the right decision right now.
But, and we have to be real about this, that alignment comes with a cost. We talked about the princes, but verse 51 is explicit. The proud have had me greatly in derision, yet have I not declined from thy law.
Derision, mockery, being the butt of the joke.
That hits home. It's easy to have integrity when everyone applauds you for it. It's really hard when you're the only one in the group chat or the break room holding a position that everyone else thinks is outdated or stupid.
That is the modern prince's moment. Integrity today is often about quiet conviction rather than public validation. It's knowing that you are right even when the room says you're wrong.
And that requires a massive amount of internal strength.
It does.
So how do we actually do this? Because it sounds exhausting. If I'm fighting the culture, fighting my own melting soul, and trying to stay on the tracks, how do I build that stamina?
The text is very clear that this isn't passive. You don't just catch this kind of faith like a cold. You have to build it. Look at the verbs he uses throughout the chapter.
I did notice that. Seek, meditate, delight, run, stick.
I have stuck unto thy testimonies. That sounds like effort. It sounds like holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
But look at verse 11. I have hid thy word in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee.
Hid it. That implies something valuable. You hide treasure. You don't hide trash.
And you hide it inside. This is about internalization. It's the difference between reading a menu and eating the meal. He is digesting this truth so that it becomes part of his cellular structure.
So it's not just having the Bible app on your phone. It's having the content in your bloodstream.
Right. So when the crisis hits, when the horror takes hold, he doesn't have to run home and look up the verse. It's already there. It's a reflex.
But here's my favorite part of the entire deep dive. Because after all this talk of hiding the word and running the way, you expect the guy to be perfect.
I do.
You expect the end of the chapter to be him floating on a cloud of holiness, having defeated his enemies.
And instead, we get verse 176, the very last sentence of the longest chapter in the Bible.
I have gone astray like a lost sheep, seek thy servant.
It's a shock ending. After 175 verses of claiming to love the law, to meditate all day, he ends by admitting he's wandering off.
I'm lost. Come find me.
It completely dismantles the idea that this is about perfectionism. He knows he's a sheep. And sheep aren't exactly the smartest animals. They wander off even when they know better.
But look at the second half of that verse. Seek thy servant, for I do not forget thy commandments.
That's the key. Even when he is lost, he hasn't forgotten who the shepherd is.
So the definition of a faithful person in Psalm 119 isn't someone who never gets lost. It's someone who knows who to call when they do.
Exactly. It's about the orientation of the heart. I am prone to wander, but I want to be found. That is a massive relief for anyone trying to live this out.
It shifts the whole dynamic from transactional to relational.
Right. A transaction is, I kept the rules, now pay me with a good life. When the bad life happens, the deal is off.
The relationship is, I trust the shepherd, so I will stick to his voice, especially when it gets dark.
And that leads to the promise in verse 165. Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them.
Nothing shall offend them. That's a bold claim.
It doesn't mean nothing will hurt them. The princes are still there. The pits are still there. It means nothing will cause them to stumble so badly they can't get up.
It's resilience.
It is. It's a resilience that comes from having that fixed anchor point.
And throughout the text, notice what he asks for. He rarely says, God, kill the princes. Or, God, give me $1 million.
No.
He says, give me understanding.
Verse 34, verse 125. He wants the wisdom to navigate the maze, not just a helicopter ride out of it. That is a sign of spiritual maturity.
It's asking to be taught how to fish, rather than just asking for a fish sandwich.
Or asking the parent to hold your hand in the dark rather than asking them to make the sun come up early. It's trust.
So, to bring this all the way back, we started with a boring list of rules.
Yeah.
We ended with a survival guide for a chaotic life.
We found a map for the trenches.
We've seen that the structure, that crazy A to Z acrostic, brings order to chaos,
Yeah.
that the legal terms are actually a language of intimacy. That obedience is actually the only way to be free, like a train on the tracks. And that being faithful doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you want to be found.
That's a powerful summary.
Now, at the deep dive, we always want to move from information to application. It's not enough to just say, wow, that was deep. We want to strengthen that trust relationship.
Right. The question is, what changes? Maybe for you, it's rethinking your relationship with rules. Do you see them as a cage or as the tracks that let you move?
Or maybe it's realizing that the anxiety you feel is because you're trying to navigate without a fixed point.
Or maybe it's the hiding part. Maybe you need to stop just reading the menu once a week and start actually eating the meal, memorizing, internalizing.
So that when the princes of your life start speaking against you, you have something true to say back to yourself.
And for some listeners, it might be the integrity piece, deciding that you're okay with being had in derision by the modern world because you're playing for a different audience.
That's the hard one. But that's where the great peace kicks in.
It is.
We want to thank you for hanging out with us for this deep dive into Psalm 119. We hope it made this massive chapter feel a little less intimidating and a lot more vital.
We do.
If you find these discussions helpful and you want to support what we're doing here, please consider joining our mailing list. You can find that at https://bit.ly/protectioladvice.
That really helps us keep the lights on and keep digging into these texts.
Before we go, we always like to leave you with one final thought, something to chew on as you go about your week.
We talked about how the psalmist found delight and even songs in the statutes of God. Verse 54 says, "Thy statutes have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage."
Songs in the house of my pilgrimage. That's poetry.
But remember the context. He wrote that while princes were persecuting him. He wrote that while he was melting for heaviness.
Wow. Yeah.
So the question for you is this. If he could find music in the middle of that nightmare because of where he was looking, what songs might be hidden in your own current struggles right now if you stopped looking at the problem and started looking at the promise?
That's something to think about. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.